Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news this Thursday morning. Folks, let's get into the economy. The Fed is failing. They keep raising the interest rates to cool inflation. And one of the matrices they have in this matrix that they're looking at is they wanted to have a cooling off of demand for labor. That's what they're hoping. They're doing to tame the inflation while the number of available positions jumped to 10.7 million from a revised 10.3 million a month earlier. And the economists had expected the figure to drop below 10 million, but it's actually at 10.7 million. So that brings the ratio of job vacancies to unemployed people back up to almost 2 to 1. It's at 1.9. Close to the all-time high it hit in March. So another fail for the Fed. Expect rates to continue to climb. Okay, folks, we were screwed over by the Supreme Court. And this has to do with the mandates. This is Bloomberg reporting. Supreme Court leaves intact ruling that lets us require masks on planes and trains. Okay, so let me get this to you. Essentially, what the Supreme Court did yesterday, it allowed a ruling to stand that gave the TSA the authority to require travelers to wear masks on planes during the previous pandemic. And obviously that would stand by the Supreme Court for any future scam pandemic that they may have down the pike. The DC District Court of Appeals previously ruled the TSA had the authority to require travelers wear masks. A California lawyer suit to challenge the mask requirements on planes and trains. And this isn't Corbett versus or Corbet versus TSA. That California lost, so here's what Bloomberg is reporting. The U.S. Supreme Court let stand a ruling that said the Transportation Security Administration could require airline passengers to wear masks during the height of the pandemic keeping in place a precedent issued by a key federal appeals court. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruling said TSA had broad authority to maintain security and safety during national emergencies. TSA scrapped its mask mandate in April after a federal judge in a different case. So the requirement exceeded the agency's power. The simple Supreme Court order is defeat for Jonathan Corbett, or Corb, a California lawyer and self-described frequent flyer who sued to challenge the mask mandate. He asked the Supreme Court to either take up his appeal or declared the case legally moot and wipe away the D.C. Circuit opinion. So it couldn't serve as a precedent. So Biden implemented the travel mask mandate in 2021. And if you recall, in an earlier this year, a Trump-appointed federal judge struck down Biden's travel mask mandate. So the TSA lifted the mandate in response to the federal judge's ruling earlier. But the Supreme Court is saying that the federal government in fact can enforce masks on airplanes. I don't know who ruled what on this. But you can bet that probably Trump's folks didn't do right by us. I'm trying to get you the full report from Bloomberg. Okay, the desperation is absolutely palpable and crazy. They are pushing the panic button. It's all hands on deck. It's full out. Let's get everybody we possibly can to help the tyrants in the final stretch. The ever so popular, intelligent Chase and a well-loved Vice President Kamala Harris and the honest, the victorious former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton are headed to New York to reportedly help Governor Kathy Hochschild and Attorney General Letitia James in Manhattan in a couple of days, or I guess tomorrow, in a last-ditch effort to save the governor from defeat in the midterms. So as of reported, Lee Zeldin is going up in the polls, and they supposedly have everything fixed in New York so that the results can be trusted, and we'll see. I don't know what kind of, I'll just leave it at that. You just decide whether you believe that statement or not. The New York Times reported that Harris was not been a popular surrogate for candidates to cycle in. Clinton would campaign with Vocal and James in Manhattan in an effort to try and move the needle in the governor's re-election campaign. This comes as national Democrats are starting to worry about those election chances as a Republican opponent. Long Island Congressman Lee Zeldin has in writing a late surge of the trouble the Trafalgar Group found yesterday, a couple days ago, late Monday night, that Zeldin was slightly leading in the polls by less than a percentage points. But he's in a surge, closing the gap over the last few weeks. Also, the Democratic Governors Association has thrown money in the race after initially not putting any money in there. They thought it was all wrapped up. Now they're putting money into the race. Now, folks, this could be not just about Lee Zeldin beating Kathy Hochul as a governor of New York, but there's also signs that down ticket, the Republicans and conservatives are doing very well. This looks like it could be another Virginia again, where you got Youngkin, you got in for the governor of Virginia, and you got a whole bunch of down ticket, and that state wins for Republicans and conservatives. So now it's all hands on deck and boys that show their desperation. A sanctuary Kamala Harris is a loser that polled less than 2% of Democrats in favor of her. And loser, Hillary Clinton, who is very disliked, not just by Trumpsters, but Democrats. So another person who is highly disliked is Liz Cheney, who is showing her true colors and getting assistance by our taxpayer money via propaganda, courtesy of PBS. And then, this is some big news. The Paul Pelosi breaking story continues to confuse and baffle, but I think we finally discovered what's really behind it. And as Joe Biden would say, can all be summed up in one word: Democrat desperation. You're not going to want to miss this. According to the official police report to a mentally disturbed drug addict named David Depop, a broken-up Paul Pelosi San Francisco home early Friday morning, demanding to see Nancy. At some point Paul Pelosi excused himself from the pulpit by saying he needed to use the bathroom. It just so happens that that's where he was conveniently charging his phone. And so at approximately 2:30 a.m. Paul Pelosi called 911 on his cell phone. This is the recording of the police dispatch, immediately following that call. Now you'll notice obviously here that according to the dispatcher Paul Pelosi knew the intruder's name and said that he was a friend. Now for whatever reason, San Francisco police have not released the tape of Pulpus's original 911 calls so that we could confirm that that is exactly what he told police, that this fellow David, whose name he obviously communicated to the dispatcher, was his friend. Now I'm not making any insinuations here. I'm only saying that that is very weird. How did Paul Pelosi know David Depop's name? And why did he refer to him as a friend? The dispatcher clearly stated that Pelosi sounded confused given that he said he didn't know him, but knew his name. And that is a friend. So yeah, clearly there's some confusion there. But now we're being told no, Pelosi did not know him. And he certainly wasn't a friend. So the part about Pelosi not knowing him is true. But then how did he know his name? And why did he claim to Pop it was his friend in the privacy of his bathroom? But that, ironically, is where the confusion actually just begins. Now, we're being told that postmen were not in their underwear when police arrived. Only Paul Pelosi was. The initial report came from a Fox affiliate KTVU, which has since retracted that report, saying that they misrepresented the police account that said to Pop it was simply in this short. So no, Pelosi didn't know him even though he told police his name and that he was a friend. And secondly, only one of them was in his underwear while the puppy was in his shorts, whatever that means. Thirdly, what about this call from the bathroom? Why would a guy who just broke into your home demanding to see Nancy let you leave his sight? Lock the door behind you and perhaps escape through a window? Why would he do that? And why would you conveniently have a cell phone charging in the bathroom? Look, I've been to a number of people's homes and frankly, I've never seen a cell phone charging in the bathroom. Okay. But then things get even stranger. For example, why was it so easy for this fellow to puppy to break into the Pelosi's home? The house has a top-notch security system replete with multiple security cameras? How did someone just waltz right in at 2:30 in the morning? Where were the people that were supposed to be monitoring those security cameras, and why haven't they released those tapes of the break-it? Why haven't they released the police body cam footage of when they first encountered Pelosi and to Pompey? I mean, the bizarre silence surrounding the police account is almost as bizarre as the account itself. But there's even more here. Gets stranger. Here's what Tucker Carlson had to say about it. Everyone listen to this. The story around the attack on Paul Pelosi in San Francisco last Friday night, we couldn't and we still can't. It's not gotten any clearer in the past 24 hours. Police in San Francisco, for reasons that are not clear and not defensible, are still refusing to release the body camera footage which would answer most questions. And now there are more questions about why the Pelosi home was supposedly unguarded that night. According to CBS News, after January 6, Nancy Pelosi moved hundreds of Capitol Hill police officers to field offices in Tampa in San Francisco. Did you know that she's got her own police force? Now, the point was to protect members of Congress, presumably from Donald Trump's QAnon army. So there was a field office, the Capitol Hill Police in San Francisco, or into this news account. And yet somehow there was no security at the Speaker of the House's home on Friday night. That doesn't make sense at all. Doesn't make sense either is the suppose a blog of the man accused David de Papi. Take a look at it. Reads like a left-wing activist idea of what acute on extremists would post. So this guy was homeless, mentally ill and addicted to drugs who paid to register the site. The first time the site appeared on archiving services was the day of the attack. What does that mean? Like? How could you explain that? Maybe there's a good explanation, not alleging anything, just asking questions, as they say, but those are fair questions to ask. But no one, the media, is gonna ask those questions. Why? Okay, folks, does any of this add up to you? Of course not. None of this has to be without question one of the most bizarre, baffling and bewildering stories imaginable. None of it makes any sense, literally. Nada. Nothing. So what does the legacy media have to say about this? Well, what they have to say, I believe, is a clue as to what's really going on here. So what's the legacy media saying in response to the grotesquely bizarre details thus far emerged from the San Francisco police? Well, you know the answer: nothing. None of the freakish facts seem to bother the legacy media in the least. In fact, the more common people ask questions, the more the media accuses them of peddling and right-wing conspiracy theories. Instead of the media probing and investigating and getting to the bottom of obviously absurd and insane story about the third most powerful person in the nation, the person next in line to becoming president after Kamala Harris, heaven help us all. Instead, we're the ones, citizens are the ones who are left asking the questions, and the moment we begin making our inquiries public, the legacy media fires back off, insurrectionist, we are in charge of the facts here. Facts you will learn about on an as-needed basis. Who want you to inquire, question the facts that we, the mainstream media, the guardians of democracy, have reported thus far if they don't make sense to you? But what do you expect, you knuckle-dragging deplorable? You reading too much QAnon. It's no wonder Jeremy Boring tweeted out, quote, "Journalism is dead." 20 years ago, every major publication would have been boots on the ground chasing the facts in the Paul Pelosi story, questioning the narrative, interviewing everyone even tangentially connected, demanding transparency and the release of calls and footage. What happened? Well, I think Rising Serpent said it best when he tweeted out, quote, "Isn't it amazing how the media hasn't figured out the Jan 6 pipe bomber, the Supreme Court leaker? A single one of Epstein's clients, the motive of the Las Vegas shooter, but they knew Paul Pelosi's midnight visitor was MAGA, even before both could put their underwear back on." I think that hits the nail on the head, no pun intended. Our legacy media is working in tandem with the Democratic Party to try to successfully weaponize this break-in as indicative of the kind of extremist violence that the ultra-mega Republican Party is parties in fostering in our nation. And lo and behold, look what we have here. It's just been announced that Joe Biden is going to go back to his Emperor Palpatine character, he's going to put the blood red lights back on, and he's gonna deliver a speech to the nation tomorrow night, Wednesday evening, warning the American people of the violence behind the Republicans who are about to vote into office and the threat they collectively pose to the future of democracy. This is happening. This is really how the Democrats actually believe that the attack on Paul Pelosi is going to finally galvanize the American people against the Republicans. In other words, what the Jason X committee failed to do, what the original blood red speech failed to do. What the call to save Roe v. Wade failed to do. What redefining recession failed to do. They think Paul Pelosi will do. This is really happening. This is the modern Democratic Party. They actually believe this is going to work. Weaponizing Pelosi is breaking they believe will function effectively as an October surprise that inordinately affects the election results in their favor. And Joe Biden is going to be their spokesman. All of it smacks of total desperation. We may never know what really happened at the Pelosi house that night given the complicity of the legacy media with the messaging of the Democratic Party, but we sure know political collapse when we see it. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. If you're up for it, I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching,